All right, Mr. Chair, Chair Police, we're on the air whenever you're ready to begin.
Yes. Would you please have a roll call for us? Or
Pledge of allegiance.
I guess we don't need that. We just have a pledge of allegiance. Pledge.
I pledge allegiance
To the
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Oh, Mr. Villalobos, you want to announce the coverage?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Montecito Planning Commission's hearings are televised live on County of Santa Barbara Television, CSB TV, Channel 20 at 9 a.m. in the South Coast, Lompoc, San Ynez Valley, Santa Maria, and Orcutt areas. Rebroadcasts of Montecito Planning Commission's hearings are on Fridays after 5 p.m. on CSB TV, Channel 20. Today's hearing will also be streamed live on the county's website and will be available for download in a day or two. Would you like me to move on to roll call?
Yes, please.
Great. Commissioner Keller.
Here.
Commissioner Miller.
Present.
Commissioner Kupiec.
Here.
Commissioner Senauer.
Here.
And Chair Police.
Here.
Thank you. So moving on to our next item, which is reconsideration of the circumstances of the COVID-19 state of emergency. So the Montecito Planning Commission is asked to reconsider the circumstances of the COVID-19 state of emergency, consider whether state or local officials continue to impose or recommend measures to promote social distancing, find that the legislative body has reconsidered the circumstances of the state of emergency and that the state or local officials continue to impose or recommend measures to promote social distancing, and to direct staff, should you wish, to continue to notice and hold hearings as remote hearings consistent with Government Code Section 54953E3.
Any comments? Yes. Go ahead, Mrs. Keller.
I move that we approve the four. I'm not sure. I know we have to vote to approve it, but I'm not sure what we adopt all the recommendations and direct staff to hold hearings as consistent with the government code. Sorry, that stumbled there.
Commissioner Senauer.
I second.
Okay. Sure we have a vote?
And I'll do the roll call, but before we do that, I just want to point out that we don't have any public comment on this item. Commissioner Keller.
Aye.
Commissioner Miller.
Aye.
Commissioner Kupiec.
Aye.
Commissioner Senauer.
Aye.
And Chair Police.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
So shall we move to the status report?
I defer to Secretary Wilson on the next two.
Okay.
Good morning, Chair and members of the Commission. In regards to the status of the agenda today, we have one item on the standard agenda, and staff and I believe the applicants are available and ready to present on that item. I can move the projection report if you would like.
Please.
Look at the projection report. The next hearing would be May 18th. Based on the action we just took, we would remain remote on May 18th. We will put those findings back on that agenda and reconsider it for that date. There are no items listed on the projection report. However, coordinating with staff, we are anticipating bringing the Highway 101 to the Montecito Planning Commission as a conceptual review only on May 18th. So that is, put that on your agenda. We are coordinating that, and it'll be on the projection report soon. So that, again, we'll provide further instruction as far as how that meeting will go, but that'll be a conceptual review on May 18th for the Highway 101. And then the next hearing after that is June 1st. June 15th. Currently, there are no items projected for that date. And then we can, that's as far as the projection report goes. I can answer any questions or?
Yes, I have a couple questions. One is, could we get the information regarding the 101 as soon as it's ready to give to us? I mean, it'd be difficult if it was just a few days because if there's a large amount of material, I don't know if there's going to be. And I guess we're hoping that Public Works will have reviewed and flood control would have reviewed and the FEMA comments would be already there. Do we anticipate this date being an adequate amount of time for those reviews?
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, that is what we're anticipating. Again, this is a conceptual review. You will not be providing any formal recommendations to the County Planning Commission. It's really a conceptual review to review the application that's been submitted and provide conceptual feedback and ask questions. So that would be the purpose of that hearing. I'll coordinate with staff to see what the earliest possible time would be to get information to the commission so you could review it ahead of time.
Okay.
So I'll do that with staff offline.
Okay, I have another question before I get to that. Ms. Keller, do you have a comment?
I just want to be sure that we understand, because there have been a lot of announcements made about the decisions about the Highway 101 project. It seems to be an accepted thing that the sound walls have been eliminated, but I understand that this has still not been a final decision has not been made in this regard. Could you clarify that and tell us when that decision or decisions of that sort will be made, Mr. Wilson?
So Chair and Commissioner Keller, my standard answer is we're not agendized for that. And I
guess I just want to,
wait,
when you
yeah.
say that the conceptual review is only for input, does that mean that there will be another opportunity to actually make a decision and recommendations? Could you just be clear on that? Thank you.
So, thank you, Commissioner Keller, through the chair. Looking at the projection report, in light of the projection report, the process would be, first step would be a conceptual review by the Montecito Planning Commission, and we're targeting May 18th for that. That would be to receive information, ask questions. No decisions will be made on May 18th. Staff will receive the questions, comments from the commission at that time, work with the applicant. If there's any additions or changes to the project based on that conceptual review that may occur, it'll then come back to the Montecito Planning Commission for a final decision and recommendation to the County Planning Commission. And when I say final decision, that would be final action by the Montecito Planning Commission on the proposed project with a recommendation to the County Planning Commission. So there's going to be that. So I caution, on May 18th, we're going to provide guidance for the commissioners to only provide comments or questions on it and not get into whether or not you approve of the project or recommend the project or not. It'd just be a fact finding or information sharing type hearing. And then it'll come back for what Commissioner Keller's talking about would be the decision on the project as proposed. I hope that answers your question, Commissioner Keller and the chair.
Thank you very much. I just think there's so much public interest. I want to make it absolutely clear what we're able to do and when we're able to do it. So thanks again.
Primarily, I think what we're waiting for is comments from the staff at Public Works, like I said, flood control and FEMA, so we could get a better understanding of why we're not going to be seeing sound walls. But that's what's happening. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Wilson. And the other thing you brought up, talked about we having our meetings remote. Is there any pre-discussion about if things continue? Is this going to be the case for the summer? Or is there any kind of projections you have for that?
So I'm sure looking at the horizon, and potentially we could be in person in the summer, depending on if there's any other variants or other things. at the moment, based on information that we have and circumstances that we're aware of in the department, we're going to continue to recommend staying remote as long as possible. We're setting up to be able to allow for more of a hybrid hearing. So when we do go in person, it would allow for public and maybe staff to continue to participate remote, just to continue to one, ease the hearings and allow for more spatial environment to occur. So I don't have a set date for you. I know the director and I are working on that, but as of right now, we're anticipating it could be in the summer or early fall at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wilson. All right, moving on.
Mr. Chair, I had my electronic hand up, but that may have been disguised in my background a bit. So,
Oh, yeah, there it is. It's hidden.
sorry. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to agendize a discussion among the commission at the next meeting about the 101 project. I appreciate that we are not taking a vote about approval or not, and I think there has been potentially a lack of clarity about whether we even have a role in approving it or not. But I think that it is within the scope of the commission's ability to agendize a discussion of it beyond the Q&A with staff. And so to be clear, my motion is for a roundtable conversation or a conversation among the planning commission about the 101 widening project.
Mr. Wilson, how do you feel about that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Miller. I believe what we're anticipating bringing to the commission in May will accomplish what Mr. Miller is talking about. The item will be agendized, and you'll be able to have that discussion as part of what we're agendizing as well. So it'll be on the agenda. You'll be able to get the information, a conceptual review, and have a discussion as far as the role of the Montecito Planning Commission in that process. So we'll be able to accomplish what Mr. Miller is asking about when we put it on the agenda for May 18th.
Are you good? Are you good with that, Commissioner Miller? That sound all right?
I am, as long as I'm correctly understanding you, Mr. Wilson, that we as commissioners are prohibited from chatting with each other outside of these meetings about it. But I am intensely interested as to what other commissioners are thinking about this. And so I appreciate sticking to an agenda topic of Q&A with staff for informational purposes, but I want to be very clear that we are also agendizing a chance for that it won't be outside of the scope of the agenda for the commissioners to speak to the other commissioners about what's happening, and so that we have a both kind of a pulse and a sense of where we agree and where we disagree prior to what may be a subsequent meeting where there's voting. And so if that fits in with that, I'm good. If it doesn't, I would like to additionally agendize kind of chewing the fat.
So, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Miller, if I could respond.
Please do.
You'll be able to accomplish that type of discussion when we agendize it. However, staff and potentially maybe council will be providing some guidelines as far as how far you can get into that chewing of the fat at that hearing, because we want to be able to reserve the right for the commission to be able to have a discussion amongst each other to provide a recommendation. So if the discussion starts to go more into recommendations on approval or denial of the project, we're going to counsel you or advise you not to do that, because it could jeopardize your ability for that action that Commissioner Keller was talking about to make a final recommendation. But you will be able to have a discussion and receive guidance from staff as far as the discussion on the 18th. It will accomplish what you're looking for, or give you information on how to have that discussion.
Commissioner Sanauer?
Yes, I believe the May 18th informative first bite at the apple sort of thing is the way to proceed, agendize, and have a thorough discussion with questions, with guidance from staff regarding, and council regarding basically proceeding in areas that, since it's simply informative, conceptual, that will basically give us a lane to stay in. So I think, I think it all goes in with Commissioner Miller's thoughts. And I think May 18th, I'm very comfortable that that will basically address his concerns and the communities actually. So thanks.
Okay. I wanted to say also that, Mr. Wilson, where I disagree slightly with you and sympathize with Commissioner Miller is that when a change has been authored by the Caltrans, that is a major modification that we have not seen in the 8 years of the design and was dropped on us a month ago. It might behoove us to be able to at least advise and otherwise make comment to the fact that do we have to go from 100% of the design of the sound wall to 0? There's a lot of gray area in some of the places where they may or may not be useful. But in any event, I think that we should have we should be able to comment, if not recommend some things that we would like to see when they come back. But is that acceptable, Jeff?
So Chair and Commissioners, thank you, Mr. Polici. That is the purpose of this conceptual review, is to be able to review the project as proposed currently and to provide some feedback, ask questions on the design, and provide high-level commentary or questions. So Mr. Chair, that would be appropriate during that hearing.
Okay.
So, Mr. Wilson, not to put too fine a point on this, but if I, as an individual commissioner, am coming up with cockamamie, silly ideas, those should not be given the same weight as ideas that have the consensus of the commission. And so there's a fine line here about kind of question and answers versus kind of, my desire for there to be Danish windmills on the side of the road versus Chair Police's desire to have sound walls. What I'm wanting to be clear on is that we're not going to kind of be too narrowly agendized that we can't kind of vote on recommendations that would take the pulse of it's not a yes or no vote on the project, but to kind of for the commission to speak with the voice of 5 rather than 5 voices of 1. I don't mean to beat a dead horse here, but I want to make sure that we're all communicating. I'd rather not have this disagreement or be in an awkward situation next month. And that's why I'm kind of pushing the issue now.
I don't think anything you just said would be different than what I think Jeff is contemplating we would be doing. So I think we're all in agreement here, Mr. Miller.
Thank you.
Commissioner Miller. At least you and I are. Okay. Does our attorney, Mr. Brian Pettit, did you have anything to say? Look like you're looking a little nervous in your chair. Is there something you might want to tell us?
No, thank you, Chair. Just getting comfortable.
Okay.
So, Chair and Commissioner, I would just reiterate what Mr. Wilson said. So, just to clarify, I think we went over this last meeting. The Montecito Planning Commission has a role as the recommending body to the Planning Commission, who is the decision-making body on the project. So, Commissioner Keller, to answer your question, the project requires approval by the county. It will require approval by the County Planning Commission, which is subject to an appeal process. To reiterate what Secretary Wilson said, the purpose of a conceptual review is to agendize a discussion of the project in its current state in the application process. So it gives the commission a chance to ask questions, provide high-level comments. The project will return for the body as a whole to make that motion to provide recommendations, but the purpose of conceptual review is not for the body as a whole to make recommendations on a project before it's been finalized. So I would like to make that distinction on behalf of the Secretary. The purpose of the conceptual review is to review the project in its conceptual form and to ask questions, have a discussion. So you will be agendized to have a discussion about the project. And then when you make the formal recommendation, that's when the body would be acting as a whole to make that recommendation to the commission.
I think that's pretty clear. Commissioner Kubiak, do you have any comment before we move on? I can't hear you. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Commissioner Miller. I mean, we all want the chance to talk to each other about this project and get a sense of what's going on. I realize that we're not there to make a vote, but I think knowing what each one of us is thinking and what we've gleaned from community comment is an important part of the next meeting.
Okay. All right, if nothing else, maybe we can move on. We have no public comments, I gather. Is that right, Mr. Villalobos?
That is correct.
All right, so we have any informational reports. You want to lead that? Planning Commission informational reports.
Yeah, I've got something.
All right, go right ahead.
Yeah, I just want to give a heads up and an asterisk to that Mr. Villalobos gave us regarding, as he always does, MBAR agendas and site visits. And tomorrow MBAR is on the 21st is hearing as agenda item number 6. I believe it's a revised YMCA project. And I think that would be helpful for the public in general to at least visit an archive if they can't watch it tomorrow. It's of great import to the community. They've had neighborhood meetings, etc. So just a heads up on that. Thank you.
That's very important. You're right, Commissioner Senator. Anybody else? Okay.
My hand is raised.
Oh, I didn't see it. Go ahead.
Sorry. Thank you. I just want Commissioner Senauer, do you have any information to share with us about recent water district or sanitation district meetings that you've attended? You've been very diligent about going to those, and we count on you to be our ears and eyes at those meetings. And there seems to be renewed interest in the notion of, or renewed pressure from certain parts on this idea of consolidating the 2 special districts. Do you have anything to report on that?
Really, no. It's basically there is a feasibility study that both MSD and MWD agreed jointly on pursuing with an RFP, and regarding the merits and non-merits of a consolidating into a special district, which would extinguish the 2 districts as we see them now. It's a LAFCO project. It's involved. My understanding is that the feasibility study for this probably won't come until the fall at the earliest. And so I think that's what we're waiting for. There is community, basically community interest to a point, but I think right now everyone needs to wait for the feasibility study regarding if there are merits, considering cost and et cetera, and many other things. So yeah, that's basically my understanding.
Thank you. May I just ask Mr. Wilson and or Mr. Pettit if this is something that eventually goes forward? Is there any aspect of a potential consolidation that would come before the Planning Commission?
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I don't have an answer for you today. That's a good question. You stumped me today. If it requires if it requires a permit, then potentially yes, it would come through you, but I don't have enough information to be able to provide a good answer today on that one.
I would greatly appreciate it if you could research that and let us know at the next meeting, because there have been editorials. There's, as I say, there are certain parties and certain interests that are really pushing for this, making it, and then there are other people there that's saying this is a solution in need of a problem. So I would like to see if we have any chance to weigh in on it, because I think it would help us keep track of what's going on right now and also be prepared at such time as that might come before us. So thank you. The only other thing I was going to mention, I did mention it at the last very brief meeting, which I doubt many people tuned into, but at the previous regularly scheduled meeting in March, Commissioner Senauer mentioned the problem with the traffic at the San Ysidro off-ramp. And there now is a traffic control individual there as we noted. And this is, even though these Sheffield Drive on-ramp has been opened, there is still a considerable problem at San Ysidro, and it may need a very much longer term person in place to help that, especially in the morning hours. So I'm glad that it was that as Commissioner Senauer's inquiries were listened to and that that person is in place, but it is an ongoing problem. So just to make note of that, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. So we have two last things before we go to our standard agenda. It's the consideration of the minutes. David, do you want to start this somehow, or are we self-start this morning?
So on the agenda are the draft minutes for March 16th. The commissioners should have received that as part of your packet. So I think that what we would look for is a motion, and then once we have a motion, have it for anyone to provide any sort of edits as required.
Okay. Commissioner Senauer? Can't hear you.
Thank you. I move to approve the minutes of March 16th, 2022.
I second the motion.
Okay.
I do have one comment or question. Do we have any minutes, or will we have any minutes for our meeting of April 13th? Although it was procedural, I'm just wondering if those are minutes that we do that have been made and we do need to approve at some point.
Oh, Commissioner Keller, yes. So I apologize because the agenda for the for this hearing was released before then. So those, you'll have two sets of minutes, both from the 13th and the 20th, on your next meeting agenda.
Thank you.
So no other comments. Mr. Villanueva, you want to, Villalobos, do you want to take a roll call?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Keller,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Kupiec,
He went dark.
Okay, well,
okay, Commissioner Senauer,
Yes.
Chair Police,
yes.
and would you like to just
Well, I guess we
vote,
can
or
just,
do you want to table this until Commissioner Kupiec returns?
yeah, we can wait and let's just move on. Is
Okay.
the director? Yes, there she is. Ms. Plowman, would you like to give your report?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I have a short report today. I wanted to just, Mr. Wilson has talked a little bit about COVID. We are still operating with our counters open for appointments. We are going to be adding walk-ins to the schedule, which will be posted on our website. And we're going to start with a limited number of hours, mostly because people are taking advantage of their ability to submit things online. And so there's a lot of work for the staff to do with all those submittals and the questions that come in via email. So we're going to start small and see how many people want to come into the counter in person as a drop-in, and then we will balance that as with the workload and how people are wanting to communicate as we sort of transition out of this COVID era. I think a lot of people are enjoying the ability to either come in by appointment or have a virtual meeting or just submit things online. So we'll be watching that and we'll keep you posted. We are still monitoring the Brown Act revisions that are being proposed in the legislature. And those would allow for some of the commissioners to be remote without having to post their addresses of where they're located. This is there's two bills that are moving through right now. We think this would be of some benefit to the commissioners so that they may be able to participate in a meeting when they're not in town, if there's an important item or whatnot. So I'll keep you posted on that. I don't have any recent updates other than the two have been drafted. We had our budget hearings last week. Planning and development went on Tuesday. The hearing went well. Preliminarily, it looks like the board is going to authorize a temporary expansion of long-range planning. You probably recall in the presentation made by Mr. Clemon that we had two options presenting to the board. One was a long-term expansion, the other was short-term, where they would provide funding for consultants, and then a high-level project manager that could oversee a couple of larger projects. We will know in June when that gets finalized for sure that is in place, but they did give the CEO direction that they wanted to include that. So that's exciting news for LRP, and there's a couple of big projects that we're interested in moving forward. They are quite busy with the housing element currently, but this additional funding will be able to allow us to do some additional work that the board has been interested in. The long-range work program will be going to the board on May 3rd. So we did not go before the budget workshop like we had planned because we had some changes we had to make to it. But we will be going May 3rd if you're interested in monitoring that. And then all I have left is some future board items, most of which I think all of them are in the inland area, or I'm sorry, in the non-Montecito area. And we have the Orcutt gas station and a Vandebos appeal. I'm sorry, Orcutt gas station is on the 3rd with the long range work program. And then we have the Vandebos appeal and an ADU appeal on the 17th of May. We have Keysite 3, which is an Orcutt on the 10th of May. Santa Barbara Ranch appeal is on the 17th. And then we have two appeals of cannabis projects in Carpinteria on May 24th. And with that, I don't think I have anything further. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? I don't see any hands up. Oh, yes, there is.
There are two hands up.
Yes, I had to get to the top of my list here. All right, Ms. Keller, you're first.
Thank you very much. Ms. Plowman, on the appeals that you mentioned on May 17th, one is an ADU appeal. On what basis is an ADU possible to be appealed? And how is this one
I
come before the
believe
board?
Well, it was in the coastal zone. And so I believe it's in the coastal zone. And right now, that permit was issued when a CDP was required. And a CDP is currently required in the coastal zone for an ADU without a hearing, particularly if it's in the appeals jurisdiction. And so that's how it is moving forward to the board.
I'm sorry, so there was no CDP
There
submitted?
was a permit that had to be issued for this that is non-ministerial for this particular ADU, and that was appealed.
Okay, it was just my understanding there was no appeal on
Right.
ADUs, so that's curious.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The provisions in the coastal zone are a little bit different.
Thank you. And then there was the second appeal on the 17th. Is that a decision that has come before us that you've mentioned?
No, these are all outside the Montecito Planning Commission area.
Thank you. And then thirdly, in regard to the Brown Act, currently when we are all on Zoom, there's no requirement of publishing a location where we are.
That's
But
correct.
you're saying that if it goes into a hybrid situation, right now, you would need to identify where the commissioner is zooming in from, specifically with an address and a location,
That's correct.
as per the current act. I see, because I have actually been very remote on the Zoom calls upon occasion,
Yeah.
like in another city, but
Right.
that would not be allowable once everybody else is in person.
No, you could do that. You just have to post where you are.
Right.
With
Just have-
with an actual address or like a city, how specific?
An actual address.
Address.
So if a member of
you.
the public wanted to come and show up to the location where you were, they could. So that's what they're trying to change in the Brown Act, is that they wouldn't have to post notices like that.
Thank
of
you.
The location, yeah.
And you said there were several things. Is there another thing as potentially impactful as that?
Not really. I think it's mostly just trying to provide some more flexibility for our hearing bodies. And I mean, ideally, people would have that flexibility to be able to be remote and participate. And we would like to see it for all of our hearing bodies, because in some cases, you know, people have to travel quite a distance to get to the hearing that they need to attend. So we felt when we advocated for it at the legislature that it would just enable more people to be able to volunteer for these positions.
Thank you. Good. Thank you.
Commissioner Sanauer?
Yeah. Thanks, Director Plowman. Question, I think probably regarding long-range planning and ordinances, if that is the element that slots there, is the Ag Enterprise Ordinance that is being worked on, how is that coming along? That's been in the works for, I think, maybe a year, maybe longer.
Yeah.
What is the progress on that, please?
So it's moving forward, and we've issued a notice of preparation to begin the EIR on that.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so we will be starting the environmental review on that here shortly.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you for that report. Whoops, one more, Commissioner Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Plowman, we had at times some lively conversation earlier in the year about the desire for funding for what would be a county ordinance for SB 9, and that you thoughtfully and methodically described to us that such things are only available with funding and personnel resources.
Mhm.
Is the project that's going through and the assignment of staff for long-term planning, would that anticipate that in this calendar year, or is this the dream for a later date?
We will know more information after we hear from the board
Okay.
on May 3rd.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, if we're complete, we can go back to the vote, but Director Plowman, are you finished?
I am.
Okay, thank you very much for your report. Let's go
Thank
back, Mr. Villalobos, and complete that. If I chop up your name any worse than that, you won't know who you are. So anyway, should we go back to our voting of the minutes that we did not take because we had a missing commissioner?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we did have a motion and a second. It was motion by Commissioner Sanauer and seconded by Commissioner Keller. And we had actually, the rest of the commissioners had voted to approve the minutes as submitted. And I believe our outstanding vote, one way or the other, is Commissioner Kupiec. So I put it to Commissioner Kupiec what his vote would be for approval of the minutes, and if he had any changes as well.
No, I don't. I got blipped off the meeting for a second and I had to get logged back on. So I also approve.
Okay, great. Thank you. So our vote, unless council wants us to redo the vote, would be 5-0 for approval.
I think we're good. Huh? Should we move on?
Would you like to move on to read the first item on the standard agenda into the record?
Please.
All right. Our only item on today's standard agenda, number 1, the Dubois Additions project. The following is a hearing on the request of Peter Moore and Debbie Dubois, property owners and applicants, for approval of a development plan case number 21 DVP 18, and to determine The project is exempt pursuant to sections 15303 and 15304 of the state guidelines for implementation of the California Environmental Quality Act. And so staff is ready to make the presentation. We're just going to wait until the PowerPoint comes up on the screen.
Okay.
Mr. Police, would you like to entertain ex partes at this point?
Well, gosh, it's probably timely, if not late. Okay, let's do that. Shall we start with you?
Sure. Sure. I visited the property and project site. I believe it was the 7th or 8th of April, and met the team, including Mr. Clammer and Ms. Dubois. And I believe the landscape team was also there. I was there probably close to an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, and was basically apprised of all the project elements, and walked each element that is basically within this project for the most part. I didn't get down to the guest house, but it was basically, I was apprised of basically what was going to be an element there. So yes, so I did do a site visit, and thank you very much to Mr. Dubois and the team for accommodating my visit. Thank you very much.
Did anybody else want to make a comment? Well, if that's it, then we could move on with staff's presentation.
Good morning, Chair Police and members of the commission. Good morning, Chair Police and members of the commission.
Okay.
Good morning, Chair Police and members of the commission. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So my name is Chris Schmuckel, and I will present the Dubois Edition project, case number 21 DVP 18. The project is located at 4915 Park Lane in the Montecito Community Plan area. A tributary of the San Ysidro Creek is located to the east side of the parcel near the Buena Vista Trailhead, and which is accessed off of Park Lane. The parcel is developed with a single-family residence, a guest house, and a pool, and the parcel is accessed via Park Lane to the south with an existing driveway. Oops, too far. So here are some site photos that show this existing single-family residence, the driveway entrance, and the turnaround, including the pool and the guest house, which you can see on the pictures on the lower part of the slide. And this is the site plan. So the parcel is accessed off of Park Lane, which is on the right side of this slide. And the driveway winds past the existing guest house and the pool before arriving at the existing single-family dwelling. The proposed additions are shown in yellow and in blue. And the outdoor patio and the plunge pool area are located behind the existing garage, which is near the single-family residence. So the project includes a 958 square foot addition to the existing single-family residence and garage, a 1,885 square foot remodel of the existing residence, and construction of a new 350 square foot covered patio. The project also includes a new 130 square foot addition to the existing patio cover and a new plunge pool, hardscape improvements, and new landscape improvements. So in addition, the applicant is requesting to modify the 20-foot side setback of the property down to 16 feet along the west parcel boundary. And this would allow for the existing single-family residence and part of the proposed addition to be located outside of the side setback. So this slide shows the existing and proposed elevations for the project, with the existing elevation shown first and the proposed elevation shown underneath it. So the project would not cause a change in the existing height of the residence. And as you can see, the project will result in small modifications to the exterior of the existing single-family home. The south elevation shown on the top of the slide shows a small addition and exterior changes to the windows. And the west elevation shown beneath it includes an enclosed patio addition and an addition to the garage, which I'm highlighting right now with the laser pointer. So the top entry elevation shows the archway on the right of the slide over the driveway, which is proposed to be removed. And the east elevation shown on the bottom of the slide shows the location of the proposed outdoor patio shown on the left side of the residence. So this slide shows the north elevation with a proposed garden room addition, along with some window changes. So the project's located in the Resource Management Zone District, which requires a development plan for all development in this district. The existing single-family residence was permitted prior to the adoption of the Montecito Community Plan Update in 1992, which rezoned the parcel from single-family residential to the Resource Management Zone District. The Resource Management Zone District has a lower height requirement and wider setback requirements than the previous residential zone district, and thus the existing development is illegal nonconforming due to its height and setbacks. Specifically, regarding the setbacks, the existing home was built with a 16-foot side setback, and the resource management zone requires a 20-foot side setback. Regarding height, the home was built to a maximum height of 28.5 feet, and the resource management height limit is 25 feet. The proposed development plan includes the additions to the existing permitted structure and accessory structures. And the structure will remain legal nonconforming due to its height. So the applicant is requesting a setback modification for the side setback on the west of the parcel from 20 feet to 16 feet, which would allow an approximately 205 square foot addition. So the addition is not located closer to the property line than the existing single-family dwelling, and the setback modification will bring the property into conformance with the Montecito Land Use and Development Code with regards to setbacks. So the zoomed-in site plan shown on the slide shows the 20-foot side setback in green, in the green line that goes through the proposed addition right here, and also the existing single-family residence in this location. The proposed 16-foot setback is shown as a blue line and would allow the addition and the existing residence to be located outside the side setback area. So a modification to the setback requirement is allowed by the Montecito Land Use and Development Code in conjunction with the approval of a development plan. Staff believes that the modification to the setback requirements is justified due to the fact that it will bring the existing structure into conformance with the Montecito Land Use and Development Code, and because the neighboring properties to the west include an unmanned water tank and a sports court, and the proposed addition would also be highly screened with existing vegetation. So San Ysidro Creek is located on the east side of the parcel and has a standard 100-foot environmentally sensitive habitat buffer zone, which is used to protect the riparian vegetation and creek habitat. So this buffer can be adjusted with consultation from the Regional Water Quality Control Board and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. The county consulted with these agencies and with the applicant's biologist, and all parties supported a reduction in the ESH buffer. So the buffer would be reduced from 100 feet to 70 feet to accommodate a plunge pool and terrace, and down to 90 feet in a separate location to allow for work on a pavilion that's out there. This image shown on the right side of the slide shows the two locations where the buffers are proposed to be reduced. So as conditioned, the project would comply with the requirements of the Montecito Land Use and Development Code, and that includes the comprehensive plan and the Montecito Community Plan area. The project is also considered categorically exempt according to the CEQA guidelines, section 15303 for new construction or conversion of small structures, and section 15304 for minor alterations to land. And so staff recommends that the commission approve the project, case number 21 DVP 18, subject to the conditions of approval included as attachment B to the staff report, and make the required findings for approval as specified in attachment A of the staff report, and determine that the project is exempt from CEQA pursuant to state CEQA guidelines 15303 and 15304. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
I think Mr. Chair is on mute to recognize Mrs. Keller, I suspect.
Yes, I tried to and was talking to myself. Okay, go right ahead.
Or Commissioner Senauer, I went first last time. Please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, a couple questions. Thanks for the presentation. I'm never sure whether to wait for the applicant presentation or to ask staff, but I'll make a stab at asking staff a question or two, and then getting clarification if I need from the applicant. Regarding the elements of the project, I understand the plunge pool, but there wasn't a reference to the fountain. There is a spa or something. The fountain's going to replace it with recirculating water. Is that correct? I don't think that was sort of checked off.
Commissioner Senauer, Chair Police, yes, that is correct. That is part of the project. There's a fountain that's going to be located in the outdoor patio area near the plunge pool, and that's shown on the project plans and is part of this project.
Okay, and the plunge pool is going to be to the southeast of this recirculating fountain. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, and about what is the distance between the fountain and the plunge pool? Is there like 10 feet? I'm just trying to, considering the plunge, not the plunge pool, but the fountain and the plunge pool, there is a distance between them. Is that correct, as I recall?
Yes, that is correct. And I'm going to pull up the site plan just so that we can show where these locations are at. So this is our site plan. The fountain is located right here, which is shown with my laser pointer.
Right.
And the plunge pool is just here to the south in this location.
Right. So if there wasn't a fountain, the plunge pool could basically go to the west. Is that correct? I'm just thinking about the allowance of the 30 feet off the 100. And so I'm just trying, this is just general, maybe the applicant could ask that. So that is just a question, is if the fountain was eliminated, the 30 feet that is a variance or modification in top of the bank would maybe be addressed with that. So I'll just leave that there, okay? The garage height was increased by 3 feet, is that correct? And that's for car lifts?
Commissioner Senauer, through the chair, the garage is proposed to be increased in height slightly. I believe it's about 3 feet, and they're proposing to widen that as well.
Okay.
I think the applicant can speak to the need for that. However, I will say that the 3 feet in height isn't increasing the overall height of the existing residence, and is allowed with the 25-foot height limit of the zone district.
Correct. I was just wondering the purpose of it. The other question I had was that I don't recall at the site visit or in your, I did read it somewhere, that in the guest house area, besides a remodel of the pavilion, there is a proposed elimination of ornamental grasses and the installation of a 900-foot sand beach. Could you kind of reference that, or the applicant could? It was a new element that I had not noticed.
I'm going to defer to the applicant on that. I think
Okay.
they could speak to that in a
Great.
little bit more detail.
That's fine. Like I said, I could hold all this for the applicant too. Regarding the Buena Vista Trail, it is on this property from your schematic, is that correct? And does the easement run with the land with this property?
So Buena Vista Trail is located on the east side. It is shown here on the parcel, and the easement would not be affected by this project.
Right. I was just the query was, does it run with the land? In other words, anytime it's turned over the property, the easement remains with the county.
Commissioner Sanauer, through the chair, we can double check that for you. I'm not sure at this time.
Okay. I think I have some more questions, but I think I'll leave it for the applicant. I thank you very much.
Okay, Commissioner Keller, you want to speak, please?
Yes, I have a couple questions. Thank you. So if we approve the setback of 16 feet, right now it's legal non-conforming. Does that make it legal if we approve a 16-foot setback in this instance, even though it doesn't meet that for the RMZ?
Commissioner Keller, through the chair, if you approve the modification, then that would bring the project into conformance, and the new setback for that property would be 16 feet for this project.
I'm just wondering because the height at 28.5 feet remains legal non-conforming because it pre-existed, but the setback then would be adjusted so that it's not non-conforming, that it is legal. Is that correct?
Commissioner Keller,
So
through the chair, yes, that is correct. The only remaining non-conforming aspect of the structure would be the height.
Thank you. And could you just also clarify for me on the site plan that you were just showing that had the Buena Vista Trailhead, where the parcel to the immediate west is the water tank, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And can you point out with the pointer, so where is the San Ysidro Trailhead in relation to this?
So the San Ysidro Trailhead is on the east side of the creek, which is about in this location.
So it is, so the bridge crossing over, I'm just trying, unfortunately, I know the area, but I don't know this because of hiking, but I don't know this particular property.
If we Commissioner Keller, let's
could
maybe
jump in
help
just real
in.
quick.
The San Ysidro Trailhead is off the screen. It's probably 3/4 of a mile away from our property. What you see there is the Buena Vista Trailhead, which, you know, if you're hiking, will link to San Ysidro, but it's completely off this screen. So,
Right,
yeah.
Thank you. I didn't know if the San Ysidro was visible on this site map. So so this is just as you come up Park Lane and make the left turn onto the road that leads to the dead end where the San Ysidro Trailhead is. So thank you. I have a better sense of where it is. Thank you very much. And does the Buena Vista Trail, which goes pretty much due north at this point, doesn't go onto the property at any other point except down below where it's marked. Is that correct?
Commissioner Keller, through the chair, the Buena Vista Trailhead goes pretty much directly north along the east side of the parcel. It does not cross over onto the residence or the driveway or any aspects of the project.
Right, and I just wondered if it was also outside the parcel, but so the trail it goes the entire length of the parcel, or does it go outside into the adjacent parcel to the east?
It also goes outside onto the adjacent parcels to the north and to the east.
Okay,
as
thanks
it
very
goes-
much.
As it goes farther north.
Correct. Okay, thank you very much.
I have one question, Chris, is this modification to the setback is only pertinent to this particular change. It's not a permanent setback for the whole western boundary. Is that correct?
Actually, that's the question I asked, because if it does make it legal for the property, it's legal for anything subsequently that they want to do up to the 16-foot setback, if it makes it legal. Is that correct, Mr. Schmuckel?
Chair Polichin and Commissioner Keller, the request at this point is to reduce the full side setback. However, it would be under the discretion of your commission to limit the setback reduction to the specific elements that are currently proposed.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Liu. Thank
That's
you.
important. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else? We check any hands up? I guess not. All right. So we have comments from
After the,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just want to reserve my comments till after the
Sure.
the applicant's presentation.
Okay. Mr. Clammer, are you next, or how are we going here?
Yes. Okay. Good morning, commissioners. I'm Bob Clammer, architect for Peter Moore and Debbie Dubois in their home remodel in Park Lane. In addition to Christopher's presentation, I'd like to mention a few other items. At first, that I'm especially honored to be on this project because it is one that I originally designed 32 years ago. And that's when the zoning was 16 feet on the westerly side yard. And it was 50 feet from the top of the creek versus the 100 feet that it is today. This is the home's first remodel. Since that original design, our project goal has been to update the house to include Peter and Debbie's extended family with 6 children and Debbie's mother, including an accessible bathroom for her. Also, an important aspect of this remodel is the creation of a viable outdoor living terrace such that the family can enjoy Santa Barbara's incredible year-round weather. This is especially important to Peter and Debbie after having moved here from England. As a reminder, this terrace with plunge pool and outdoor kitchen, southeast of the existing house, is the same area that was leveled for the lawn and ornamental landscaping developed with the original house. So we're not destroying any environmentally sensitive habitat area. As a matter of fact, there's been a biological report that says there is no impact to this surrounding area. That's on page 20 and 21. Additionally, architecturally, we've matched the existing modern style. MBAR has given us the conceptual approval with following comments: well-conceived project, nice architecture and landscaping, FAR coverage justified. The project may return for a preliminary final on the consent agenda. And just also in regards to that westerly setback of 16 feet that it used to be, that's on the side of the house with their driveway, and as mentioned, I think by Chris, the water tank and the sports court of the neighbor. It's also vegetated quite a bit, as you can see in the photos, that there's no public impact to that side, and there's no public impact to the other side. Stacy Fawcett will explain in the landscape report that she's adding an additional screening to the natural vegetation there. And so for all of those reasons, we would really appreciate your approval of the staff requested items. If there are any questions, happy to respond. Otherwise, I'll turn this over to Stacy for the landscape presentation.
Hi, Stacy Fawcett. I'm a landscape architect. Thanks for hearing the project. The landscape portion of the project is pretty straightforward. since none of the development can be seen from Park Lane at all. Just some highlights is we are emphasizing the protection of the existing trees on site. We're using that as an opportunity to remove any non-native or invasive species from the ESH area. We are removing any of the lawn areas. That's where the plunge pool is going. Then also the lawn area down at the existing pool will be replaced with non-irrigated sand beach area. We're proposing some additional native screening along the ESH side to protect the views from the hiking trail towards the house, and also to provide privacy for our clients from the hikers on the trail. All the plant material we're proposing is native, drought tolerant, has been approved by the biologist on the project. Irrigation wise, we're replacing spray irrigation with drip irrigation. It's an older system, so making it much more efficient in that manner. We're also adding several much needed parking spots on site. The driveway is kind of narrow and winding. And then we met with the fire department and received their blessing. And I have the stamped approved plan within our set, as well as the Montecito BAR has given their blessing to the project as well. Happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Keller.
Thank you. I do have some questions about the FAR. In the two meetings of the MBAR, in the first meeting, two members expressed concern about the FAR exceeding the allowable, and they requested a comparable, I'm sorry, I'm just finding the page. They asked for a neighborhood FAR study with 10 to 15 adjacent properties. Was that done?
Yes, it was. We found 26 homes within a half-mile radius of this property that were all over the 1.0 recommended FAR. 18 of those, or roughly 2/3, were higher than this proposed project. So from that, I would say we are well within the context of the neighborhood.
Could you just tell me, please, because it isn't shown in the project description, what will the ultimate FAR be of the project?
1.24, I believe.
1.24 what? 1.24 what?
That's the FAR ratio. I don't know what else.
How many, I mean, so it's point, so for one, this is 0.24 over the allowable one. I'm just trying to get a sense, what is allowable in this area for the development?
Commissioner Keller, through the chair, this is Chris, the planner. So it's 124%. So it's 24% over the recommended FAR ratio for this property based on the size of the parcel.
Thank you. And what is the recommended FAR?
The recommended FAR is 100%.
No, in terms of square footage, please.
I would need to do a quick calculation to determine that for you, but I could work on it.
So you're saying that this project, and it's of the 100% that's allowable, is that for the 3-acre parcel? Or is it for the 1-acre parcel that was initially listed in the MBAR report?
Commissioner Keller, through the chair, the calculation is done based on the size of the parcel and the amount of development that's on the parcel. So it's for the size of the parcel itself. That's how they come up with that calculation.
Yes, I know. Thank you. But I'm just saying, in the MBAR minutes of July 15th, 2021, it initially lists the property as being an acre, which was corrected to 3 acres. So I am asking, and I can go look at my architectural, I did not check my architectural guidelines, but it seems to me you should be aware of what the allowed FAR is for a 3-acre parcel.
Commissioner
Chair,
Keller, Commissioner Keller, this is Travis Seawards. We will get back to you on that. Okay. Are you asking for what the actual size of the parcel is as well? It's hard to
know. Two things. I wanted to confirm that indeed it is a 3-acre parcel, since there was a mistake on the initial MBAR application or minutes agenda. And number two, I'd like to know for the 3-acre parcel, if that is correct, what is the allowable FAR? And they are reporting that this is 124% over what is allowable.
Okay, that's good. So it is a three.
A third question, please, is currently, what is the allowable? What is the? You say it's 124% as proposed, and what currently is it now without the additions? So I'd like to know that, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
So it is a 3-acre parcel, so we can confirm that right now. Okay, so with the additions on the project, the FAR for the property is going to total out at 124% of what is allowed. So it's 24% more. Would you like us to try and calculate that in square footage?
I would just like to know, please, what it currently is without the additions. And Mr. Clammer was saying that the comparables you provided were all over 100%. Would you mind repeating that? Because we didn't establish before then what this currently is and what it will be once the proposal is built.
Yeah.
So, would you mind repeating that, Mr. Clammer?
Yes, and it might be helpful also. Maybe Christopher can pull up the FAR map that we submitted with our PowerPoint, and you can get a feeling for what's the neighborhood looks like. Is that possible, Chris, or should I just explain it?
I think I just pulled it up on the slide. We're pulling it up on the presentation right now.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, that's the site there in the magenta outlined area. All the properties that are yellow surrounding that within the 2 radiuses, the first purple radius is a 1/4 mile. The next radius is a 1/2 mile. We've picked all the lots that have FARs over the recommended 1.0 FAR. So those are highlighted in green or yellow. Out of those, there are 26, and double check here. Yeah, 26 homes that are highlighted. Out of those 26 homes, 18 of them are higher in FAR than our project. So roughly 2/3 of them are greater FARs. So basically what we're proposing, it's the neighborhood. I don't know if we're not pushing the envelope beyond what is already built there. And we're not even getting to count the land up above this parcel, because that's all wilderness. So there would be probably even more homes if we were down in town further. But anyway, I think it's a pretty good ratio to help answer your question.
Ms. Liu, do you have a comment?
So this is Chris Schmuckel, the planner. I can speak to Commissioner Kelleher's question right now.
Okay.
So the existing single-family residence is 6,155 square feet in size. And with the proposed additions, the new single-family residence is 7,135 square feet in size. The recommended maximum floor area is 5,100 square feet for the parcel based on the size of the parcel. That's what's shown in our MBAR in the floor area ratio calculations. So it appears that the existing single-family residence is already over the allowable limit for the FAR ratio.
Thank you. That's what I was asking for, and I appreciate your coming up with it.
Mr. Keller, I don't want to interrupt, but I have a little bit of a follow-up question around this. That is, My understanding is that on some of these homes where it's kind of coming down the hillside, there is a little bit of discretion slash kind of confusion about when a basement counts in the FAR number versus when it doesn't, and that's somewhat contingent on like having a window or not. Is this a home where the FAR is partially being driven by what in other jurisdictions might be considered a basement?
There are no basements.
Okay.
No.
Chair and
Yes.
Commissioner Marshall, if I could just add, the Montecito Board of Architectural Review routinely approves projects that are over the recommended FAR within their, based on their judgment and the review of the specific project. And I think what happened in this particular case is when it went for the first meeting, there were a number of commissioners concerned that perhaps the overall size might not be in conformance with the community as a whole. And however, at the second meeting, when the applicant returned with the FAR study, I think the majority of the members were convinced that it was in conformance with the character and mass bulk and scale of the community and were finding the floor area ratio acceptable. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Okay.
Very much appreciate it.
Yes, Commissioner Sinauer.
Yeah, just a quick question. What is the discrete building envelope to this 3 acres? Is the property as we see it, the developed property with the proposed variance and modifications, is that a discrete building envelope or not? In other words, are there parameters to any further development?
Commissioner Senauer, through the chair, this property, the subject parcel, doesn't have a discrete building envelope. However, with the creek on the east side of the parcel, it does have the ESH boundaries, which limits and restricts development. So with that ESH buffer, there is no development that would be allowed within that area, which does restrict where the property owner can build.
I have a question. Has this FAR changed in the last 5 years? Is that why these other homes were existing that were larger than the present FAR? Or is everybody gone through in the last 10 years or longer just asking for a change? Maybe, Nicole, you can answer that. I don't know.
Chair and members of the commission, I can probably answer that generally. So I think there's probably a couple of things in play here. As Chris mentioned, this home was built before the Montecito Community Plan was in place, and I believe the FAR requirements and the Montecito Architectural Guidelines and Development Standards would have gone into place at the same time. So a number of these homes may have been built prior, as you're suggesting, prior to the application of the FAR requirements. That being said, having processed a lot of projects in the Montecito area and observed the MBAR on many occasions, as I said, they routinely approve projects that are over FAR. They have sort of a range within which they're comfortable, that they've established for themselves, and they'll ask for an FAR study to just ensure that it's in conformance with the community. So honestly, more often than not, they are approving projects that are over the FAR. The amount that they're comfortable with, I would say, is dependent on the existing surrounding community based on FAR studies.
And just one more thing regarding this. So as I thought you said earlier that the 16-foot, the change from 20 to 16, it will hold for future developments if they come back to do something, or is this a one-time modification for this particular patio or whatever it is?
Chair and members of the commission, I would think that it would depend on how you, well, because the request is specific to this project,
Right.
it would apply to actually just the portions of the project that, as shown on the plans today, extend into that area. And you could specify if you were wanting to just grant the modification for the new elements, or if you were wanting to grant the modification for both the new elements and the existing elements, leaving the existing elements legal non-conforming.
Okay, so County Council, Mr. Pettit, are you in agreement with what you just said?
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I am, yes.
Okay. All right. So do we have the applicants? Yes. Someone going to
Thank you.
interrupt me?
Yeah, I just wanted to finish. That was why I tried to establish that if we approve this, it makes it legal, not just legal non-conforming. So we can make part of our approval limited to this particular addition. I also would like to go on record as saying that the habitual approval by the MBAR of projects that are over FAR has the effect of compounding interest. It just means that every property keeps growing and keeps growing and keeps growing. And I would just personally, it makes our architectural guidelines completely irrelevant if they are not respected. And if at some point the MBIR insists that people follow what is in their recommendations. And I don't know, that's why I was trying to establish what this property currently is and how much this small increase makes it. But I would like to send a message to the MBAR that this is not what it was intended by the architectural guidelines, and their habitual use of this overage is not in the best interests of community planning. So sorry, just need to have that. Please include that in the minutes, Mr. Villalobos, because I cannot say that more strongly. This is a practice that is just very distressing in terms of our community plan and our architectural guidelines. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I have one more question regarding that property line. So to the west, I guess we're speaking to the west, is where the narrowing of the property setback is. What is over there? Is that tank there? There's no home nearby. So what, and there's no public comments or neighborhood comments to object to this modification. So what is it that's over there that we may be concerned about? I'm trying to figure out what we
Chair Police.
Yes.
Chair Police, this is Chris Schmuckel, the planner. So the driveway is on the other side of that parcel, and that takes, on the other side of the single-family residence, and that takes up most of the setback in that area, except for the small area of the proposed addition. And the parcels to the west include a water tank, like you mentioned, and then also the sports court. We've received no public comment from any of the neighbors who are all noticed for the BAR project and also for this development plan project. We've received no public comment or concerned calls from any neighbors.
Okay. Well, I think, Commissioner Keller, that we also, try to respect the objections of neighbors, but if there isn't any here, I think that falls to our discretion to decide on whether that's appropriate. But I'll start with Mr. Miller first, and you can go afterwards, Mr. Keller.
Oh, I was going to move. We go to
a vote
to consideration. Yeah.
I do have one further question, then, please.
Okay.
With regard to the environmentally sensitive habitat and the setback from the creek, once again, the area where it needs to be reduced to 70 feet and the area it needs to be reduced to 90 feet, those specific reductions, we could limit our findings to those specific areas and not make a general reduction of the setback from 70 or 90 feet. Is that correct? I guess I want to ask the planner of this.
Commissioner Keller, that is correct. I think our recommendation was for the setback reduction only in those two areas, but you have discretion to limit it only for this project, and also, to adjust it if you have other requirements.
Thank you.
Okay, Bob, you have a comment?
Yeah, my understanding is when these projects come before us and they come before MBAR, that these setback modifications are project and item specific. They are not a blanket absolvement of the ESHA. They are just for this project.
That was my understanding, yes.
Yeah, unless it's stated otherwise, that is the normal, that's the normal application that's being made. We're not reducing the setback requirement to 16 feet or changing ESHA or the other setback requirements, except for these specific items that are being proposed in this application.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kupiak, but that is not what the planner said. In regard to ESHA, I believe you're correct. But in regard to the setback, it was specifically stated that if we approve this, it will be a legal setback of 16 feet unless we make it project specific. So I just think that any motion that we make should clarify that. That's all. Unless Mr. Pettit, unless Mr. Pettit has something to say because he looks disturbed. Sorry.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Go ahead.
I apologize if I've contributed to the confusion here. I think there's some imprecise language. So I just want to clarify that what Commissioner Kupiak just summarized is accurate. So the modification, you have a project before you as a commission. You would be approving a modification for that project. So you don't have the authority to change the setback for the property. The question is whether you'd be approving a modification for this project. But Commissioner Keller, to your point, it would be not non-conforming. It would be a legal setback for this project, subject to your approval. So,
but does that mean that if they have a subsequent project that intrudes into the 20-foot setback, they will still have to get approval? Or does 16 feet apply to this property or only this project? That was the confusion that because of what the planner said, it gave me the impression it would be 16 feet for this property, not just for this particular project.
I think we got, Brian, I think you did spell it out. So I think, is that good enough for you, Commissioner?
No, he hasn't answered that question. Please, Mr. Kupiak. I mean, Mr. Police.
Commissioner Keller, through the chair. So if the applicant were to come in with a new project and wish to build within that same area, they would also need to apply for a development plan and would need to go through the same process for the modification.
Okay, thank you. So it means that just this particular project is now, in terms of setback, legal, and anything else would need to be approved. Sorry, there was confusion as a result of that. Thank you. I appreciate your clarification.
Commissioner Sinauer.
Yeah, trailing on these comments, we in reference to FAR and incremental acceptance, if in fact the community starts building larger and having increased FAR, and MBAR basically takes a look holistically and says, well, the community, the threshold is basically breached. And I think this could happen here, that in fact, if we start increasing or decreasing with modifications, the setbacks or top of the bank, et cetera, that will be looked upon, even though it's project specific, as all these other projects are that are before MBAR, they look at the totality of it. And I do think, even though this is not a question, it's a comment, and I should hold this for appropriate comments, but I do think caution should be, even though it will be project specific, exercised here. because it will be reviewed as one of a part of the whole. And I do think that's concerning. My question continues to be on the east side with the plunge pool and the fountain. And I do think top of the bank, reducing it by 30, there is a slope. Granted, I think it's less than 5%. And as far as being informed, I believe they needed extra space for an infinity look. So it has to go over the edge, etc. And all of it is taking up square footage going toward the top of the bank and the slope. If it were brought, I'm just throwing it out there. It is a question to the applicant and to the owners, and if they would consider basically eliminating or making the fountain smaller and relocating to the west the plunge pool back from the top of the bank in some metric. So that is a question.
I might just add that the reason the plunge pool goes out to the edge of the bank is a design reason because of the infinity edge. You need a drop off right there. And the owners entertain, so having the large terrace would be, that's what they would like. They really don't want to pull it back. I think the small fountain is more of a decorative item, doesn't take up much space. And shifting the whole thing westward, there is rhyme and reason for its location with alignment with a large massing on the house. So when you walk through, you see through the doors, you see across the patio, you see the fountain, the pool, and the view beyond. If we shift it, you're going to have to look through a wall. And so there were a lot of decisions that went into locating it in that location.
We're also accommodating an existing walkway. And then the location of where the plunge pool is currently lawn. It's developed area. So that isn't changing. We're eliminating the irrigated lawn and extending the terrace and along with the plunge pool, accommodating an existing walkway. So circulation is kind of part of that whole design as well.
Okay, well, it sounds like they may want us to approve it as is, but do we have is it time for a motion, or we have more comments by anybody? Do the applicants have any more to say?
Mr. Chair, before we go into that, I just want to note if we have any public comments before we go into deliberations.
Just want the record to note that there are no public speakers for this item.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything to say before we entertain a motion?
Well, don't we go for consideration and then as part of consideration?
Well, I guess we can do that here. All right, Mr. Miller.
Chair Politi, I defer to your judgment as to the. Let's go for the motion. I move to approve this project as recommended by staff.
Do we have a second?
I second that motion.
Okay. Shall we take a vote?
Well,
or shall we discuss further? Anyone? Do I have a hand up? I don't see any hands here.
Commissioner Keller has her hand up.
Okay.
Of course, I have my hand up, sorry. But I don't want the applicants and the owners to feel we're picking on them. We are using this opportunity as a chance to, I'm so sorry. We are using this opportunity to make some statements about the escalating size of FARs and the unfortunate, seemingly greater irrelevance of the architectural guidelines. And that's not your fault, but this seems like an appropriate project, and we want to support, at least I want to support it, but I think that some of these concerns need to be expressed. And as long as I am reassured that these modifications will only apply to this application for this project, I am happy to support it. So thank you.
I think we have that. Commissioner Miller, do you one more comment?
Sure. I appreciate the comments of Commissioner Keller and Commissioner Senauer about precedential nature of this. I think I missed a moment earlier on this on ex parte because it was a long time ago, but 20 plus years ago, my high school sweetheart lived in 919, which is the house that is right directly behind this house and looks down on it. And so I've driven the driveway up and down on the west side of this quite a bit, and I have looked down on this house with a fair amount, and this is really not disruptive to the area in my experience on this. But I think to Commissioner Keller and Commissioner Senauer's comments is that how do we avoid this being precedential, given that this particular situation is I see that as our job. Is that I'm kind of prepared to stand on that bulwark with you guys on where this is a problem for the community, we need to make sure this doesn't happen. But there is a single house behind this, and then it's into the national forest. There is nothing on either side of this that is it's not particularly disruptive. So I'd prefer to pick a different, more disruptive case to kind of make this point. So I'll be voting yes.
Yeah, that's understandable. And I guess I can go back to my comment with the fact that if we don't have neighbors complaining or any other agency complaining, and we have the recommendation by the county planning, I think it gives us some solace that this minor modification, could actually be approved. It does, continue a trail of this kind of imperfection for our FAR details that we've been letting modify itself. But anyway, I'm good with what we have, but I want to have Commissioner Kupiak have a comment here. Go ahead, Bob.
I mean, a number of us, I think even Susan has served on MBAR. I've served on MBAR for 4 years. There's a process. There's also a process within MBAR about community compatibility. Owners are put through a pretty rigorous ring of fire to make sure they can justify the proposals that they make. And I think MBAR does take into consideration all aspects, whether there is encroachment in some way on a neighbor, neighbors get to comment. I know that there are several commissioners that are very, very concerned about people who go over the FAR. So all of these things are looked at. So there is a process in place. I don't see the community plan being abused in some way by, these are all very project specific issues about whether or not an encroachment or an overage of the FAR really affects the property. And I don't mean in this particular case, I can't see any impact, in terms of what they're proposing. I always concerned a little bit about, encroachments upon esches, but, I really do rely quite a lot on, the judgment of that 6-person panel that really gets to view these projects a number of times and makes changes. So I don't think there's a rodeo going on out there. And I do support the project, having made the motion.
I think we're ready, Mr. Villanueva. I keep confusing with my good friend. Villalobos, do you, without further ado, can we take a roll call?
Absolutely. Commissioner Keller.
Aye.
Commissioner Miller.
Aye.
Commissioner Kupiak.
Aye.
Commissioner Senauer.
Aye.
Chair Palice.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, congratulations to the applicants and to the staff for all the good work you did.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Thank you, and to to the planners as well. This has been a one-year project, and it's a red letter day for us, and we really appreciate it. And we love living here and making this home, updating it to where we will all feel proud about it. So we thank you for your cooperation and understanding, and we don't feel picked on.
Good.
You've only got a year to go.
Yeah, well, yeah, now the trouble starts, right?
Yes, right.
All right, thank you so much, everyone.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Nicole, nice job. And Chris, good work. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, I think we could consider wrapping this meeting up. Is that right, Jeff?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, you are correct. We are done and we can adjourn.
Okay. We don't need a vote, or do we?
Nope.
All right, kids. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye, Dad.
I like that.